Before we proceed with the items on the agenda, I need to remind you of the usual housekeeping messages. There are no fire alarms tests planned for this evening, so if it sounds, please leave the chamber by the nearest door, then follow the illuminated fire exit signs and assemble in the car park at the rear of the building. You have the right to film this meeting if you so wish. I would like to know before we begin whether anyone in the room plans to do this. If you intend filming the meeting or part of it, would you please indicate now? No. Okay, thank you. Before we move on, I am delighted to welcome two newly elected councillors to their first full council meeting following their recent by-election successes. Councillor Richard Rendell, Councillor for Cleveland Park, thank you. Okay, and Councillor Colette Rushforth, Councillor for Preesall. Okay, nice to meet you this evening. I would also like just to say a few words about Queen Elizabeth II. As we all mourn such a sad loss to our nation, the death of Our Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, she has been our longest ever reigning monarch, an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Like me and others in this chamber, she is the only serving monarch we have known and an inspiration to so many. As the crown passes in an unbroken line of succession, like it has done through the centuries, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty King Charles III. We bless His Majesty with a long, happy years to reign over us. I'd like to invite the leader now to say a few words, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the head of state and the longest reigning monarch in our country's history, Her Majesty played a central role in British life, bringing the country together at times of social change and shaping our values as a nation. Queen Elizabeth was a champion of British values as a royal patron to over 600 charities, many of them small ones supporting local areas. Her life will be remembered for one of service, duty and devotion to communities up and down the country, the Commonwealth and beyond. Her celebration of communities and recognition of civic pride and achievement in all walks of life through the annual programme of investitures and other awards given in her name empowered local leadership and commemorated all those who have contributed to the life of the nation and the Commonwealth. Her Majesty's dedication to every one of us, alongside her continuous hard work and loyalty to her United Kingdom, was clear to see throughout her life. Her high regard for local government was also truly reflective in her focus and appreciation of Council's work and determination in her annual Queen's speech. Councils have been proud to serve Her Majesty throughout her reign and will continue to do so by now supporting His Majesty King Charles III. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Could I ask now Sir Robert Atkins, as member of the Privy Council, to say a few words, please?
Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most difficult speeches that I've ever had to make in my public life, but at the same time, one of the easiest. Difficult because the demise of the constancy of the Queen as our head of state throughout most of our lifetimes and what she has meant to us over that period. But easy because she was such a magnificent example to us in the United Kingdom. Her passing has been recognised throughout the world, as has been her service and what she represented of the values of Britain. The words have been said and will continue to be said for many years. Charm, grace, wisdom, kindness and humour, to name but a few. She personified Britain across the globe. And what an example she set of commitment and, above all, duty to her people. Hereditary monarchy is a somewhat strange and old-fashioned mode of leadership, but Queen Elizabeth made it what it is today and what our King will inherit. I have had the honour and privilege of being a member of Her late Majesty's Privy Council for some 27 years, and was present in London last Saturday at St James's Palace for the Accession Council and the proclamation. First and foremost, I was greatly touched and impressed by the thousands of people in and around the Mall, Buckingham Palace and St James's Palace, and the warmth and sadness that they represented for our late sovereign, but also, and subsequently, for King Charles. He knows that he has a hard act to follow, but I'm convinced he will rise to the task, as did his mother, following the early death of her own beloved parent. We mourn the loss of Queen Elizabeth II, whose memory we will cherish forevermore. But we now welcome King Charles III and offer him our collective loyalty and support. God save the King.
Well, as the Armed Forces Champion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, and that I will, as in duty bound, honestly and faithfully defend Her Majesty, her heirs and successors in person, crown and dignity against all enemies, and will observe and obey all orders of Her Majesty, her heirs and successors, and of generals and officers set over me. God save the Queen. This is the oath I spoke and then signed as a 16-year-old apprentice 44 years ago, almost to the day, and it's an oath which I still abide by. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was the Commander-in-Chief of the whole of the Armed Forces, a role which she meant a significant amount to her. Indeed, she herself as Princess Elizabeth did her bit during the war, but we simply called her the boss. I was incredibly proud to join Her Majesty's Armed Forces, and I joined the Army Catering Corps, which, as an apprentice chef, depending on how good I was at it, meant that I also had the potential of killing lots of squaddies without actually firing a gun. The motto of the Army Catering Corps is, we sustain. And of course for me, that meant the troops buy food, nourishment, plenty of tea, and of course, lots of beer. The motto, we sustain, is also one that could have been used perfectly well by Her Majesty. For over the last 70 years, she has sustained us all by her hard work, dedication, her selflessness, and of course, the love for her people, not just people in the United Kingdom, but people all around the world. I will miss her constant. We will never see her like again. Long lived the Queen, long live the King.
Councillor Raphael, leader of the Labour Group, would you like to say a few words, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My thoughts and those of the Labour Group are with Queen Elizabeth's family at this sad time. My recollection, like most of us here, is one of one monarch. We've known nothing else. She's been a constant. And although at 96 her passing was perhaps not a shock, it is the end of an era. It's a monumental change that brings uncertainty. Things will never be quite the same again. Our paths only crossed once, and I use the term very loosely. I was 12 at the time of the 1977 Jubilee, Silver Jubilee. A number of us from Baines School went to one of her famous walkabouts, this time in Lancaster. I can't quite recall how or why I was chosen to attend, and many of you here might be thinking of the same thing now. Nonetheless, that day was a small part of the history made during those Silver Jubilee celebrations. Queen Elizabeth had many attributes, duty and dedication, to name but two. The Queen did not choose to take on the role she did. She saw it as her duty and undertook it with care and compassion. Constitutionally, she was a steadying force when she came to the throne less than 7 years after the end of World War II. And she understood that many looked to her for guidance and leadership during during bad times. She dedicated her life to serving our country. One-time Cleveley's resident and entertainer Roy Castle knew all about dedication. He famously sang, Dedication's what you need if you want to be a record breaker. And a record breaker is exactly what Queen Elizabeth became, the country's longest serving monarch. 70 years, that's some dedication, and unlikely to be surpassed.
On behalf of David O'Neill, who can't be with us tonight, could I ask Colette Fairbank of the Wyre Alliance Group to say a few words, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My speech isn't anywhere near as long as any of yours, but I'll continue anyway. I wish to pay tribute to Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, who dedicated 70 years of her life representing the UK with such grace and finesse. We are so grateful to her, and we couldn't ever possibly thank her enough for her service. God bless the Queen, and God save the King.
Thank you everyone for them kind words. May I remind councillors that if you have not already signed the Book of Condolence and wish to do so, it is in the reception area. You can do this after the meeting. It's actually just through them doors on your right hand side, so if nobody wants to sign it, it's just through them doors. The first item on this evening's agenda is apologies for absence. Okay, we've got Councillor Gerard, Councillor Minto, Councillor Moon and Councillor Rayner. Is there any more apologies? And Councillor O'Neill. Okay. Right. Yep. Okay. Got a mic. We'll carry on regardless if there is, like I say, a muffling sound here. The next item on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes. Can I please have a...
No, we got all that off.
Factual accuracy of the minutes, propose an amendment. No. Would those members present at the 7th of July meeting who are in favour of confirming the minutes as a correct record, please indicate. Okay, that looks like a unanimous decision. Yep. Yep. So that's the minutes of the 7th of July meeting are confirmed. Do any members of the or officers have any interest to declare any items included on the agenda? No. The next item is the announcements, and there is no announcements in this evening. So the next item is the public questions or statements. However, there are no questions from the public this evening. So the next item is a notice for councillors, and again there is no notice from councillors. So we'll move on to the next, which is executive report. So first, the report of the leader of the council. Councillor Henderson, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report is before members. I've just got two things to add to it. As I said before, that anything that I find out or anything that's brought to my attention regarding the reopening, hopefully, of the Poulton-to-Fleetwood rail link, I'm now glad to add that it's moved along. It's been guided very well by LCC, and now it's moved along to Network Rail to take over the lead. It's a strategic outline business case. It's now being developed by Network Rail, who are now leading on the project with funding provided by the Department for Transport Restoring Your Railway Fund. The next steps of the outline business case is a light review with the objective to develop a fuller and detailed business case, looking at tram train, which is the model that is used in Sheffield. And as a person who visits Yorkshire and Sheffield quite a bit, I can say that that's an excellent model, and it grows along, reaching out of the city all the time. So it's a super model, is that one. And they are also looking at heavy rail as well. 2 options are to be considered. We're going to receive regular updates on how this next part progresses, and Steve Smith, our head of planning service, will be invited to attend all future meetings. That's that one, Madam Mayor. The other one is just a correction now, of course, on my report, and that is at 3.1. The Blackpool-Fylde and Wyre Economic Prosperity Board, like a lot of other meetings, has been postponed to a later date. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I think Councillor Fale, you indicated to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quite rightly, the worsening cost of living crisis features heavily in the Leader's report, and it seems county councils are taking some action to mitigate issues over the winter months, such as opening libraries and other public buildings as places where people can keep warm. It's unclear exactly what Wyre Council will do itself, although I welcome Wyre developing a plan to assist with people who become homeless. With bills and food costs going up, it seems inevitable that the numbers of people in financial difficulty and needing advice and assistance will go up. Can I ask whether consideration can be given for council tax support or discretionary discounts that could be made available for those in real difficulty? And also whether Wyre can make contingency plans to support the Citizens Advice Bureau with emergency funding, or by Wyre's staff helping out and being temporarily relocated with CAB staff at Fleetwood Market. I hope this isn't required, but the Labour Group would rather the Council be prepared for that eventuality. Thank you.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Fale, for that. Part of your questions will be answered by the 2 gentlemen on my left and my right, because it falls under their portfolio. What I can tell you as a generalisation is that as soon as the Warm and Welcome Public Spaces was announced, we were straight on to what can we do. And we are working along the lines of supporting the LCC in their proposals, and if we then can help by opening any of our areas, I don't know, leisure centres, so on and so forth, that's another thing that we're already looking at. But in the first instance, we are going to take the route that we took during COVID, where we will be a hub bringing everything together, everyone together, churches, charities, so on and so forth. We've already been in touch with them and putting things in place. And as I said, Councillor Berry will tell you a little bit more in his report, because I think today he has been briefed on it, and Councillor Michael Vincent will deal with the rates part of it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not a question, it's to say thank you for the update on the rail. As you know, we've been fighting for this for a long time, and that really is great news. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. That concludes the consideration of the Leader's report. We'll now move on to the report of the Resources Portfolio Holder. So, Councillor Michael Vincent, would you like to introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. An update on 5.1. Those figures are obviously produced when the report is produced, which is quite some time ago. So I'm pleased to say that we've now helped 330 businesses, and we've distributed 88% of the money that we have available under the scheme. So that's another example of Wyre doing what we do best, and that's getting money out to the people who need it. Happy to answer any questions, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Sir Robert Atkins, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Further to what Councillor Fale was inquiring earlier, can I press the resources portfolio holder on what we are doing, what we can do, and what we intend to do in relation to providing support and encouragement for those in areas of deprivation? Because whilst we hope that it won't be as bad as everyone suggests it might be, it could be. And we need to show a lead on behalf of our residents in this area. And I would hope that, by and large, this would be a fairly non-partisan, cross-party approach. But after all, we lead the council, and therefore we should set that lead.
To respond to that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Sir Robert. Yep, absolutely agree. We, as a council, need to do what we can. As an authority, we only charge 8.5% to the poorest in our society for localised council tax support. That obviously is an amount, though, so we have attempted to try and make that zero as soon as possible, but unfortunately we can't do it without consulting. So that consultation process will start as soon as possible, and it will come to the next cabinet meeting. So we will immediately start the consultation that's required to reduce that to zero. That's the best way that we can help people. With regards to Councillor Fale's comments about the CAB and funding and things, we would consider any request that the CAB made to us. We can't tell them how to provide their service, though, so we can't really intervene and tell them that they need to put people here and put people there. If the CAB were to come to us and look for support, we would consider such a report if it was in the best interest of the people in Wyre. We would also look at any scheme the government were going to fund in terms of relief for council tax for those that needed it. Ultimately, though, this council will do what it can. It has reserves, but those reserves are earmarked reserves, and we can't spend it on day-to-day expenditure. So we have to live within our means. There is wiggle room within the budget. What we can't do, though, is start saying that we will let people off who don't pay their council tax because they can't afford to pay it, because that isn't fair on everybody else. Anything that would happen would have to be within a scheme. So we will wait and see what happens on that front. We can't just, on a case-by-case basis, decide who pays and who doesn't. It can't work like that. But we will continue to do what we can. Councillor Henderson has touched on the Warm Spaces scheme. It's a great scheme brought forward by LCC. It makes sense for us to work with our partners on that. It doesn't make sense for us to suddenly start opening up buildings that wouldn't be open anyway and wouldn't be heated anyway, because we all have costs to consider. The YMCAs are one option, the church halls, town halls, village halls, charity places, they're all other options, and there's a lot more of them than there are Wyre Council buildings. So as David has said, opening up and working with partners to open up buildings is the right way forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's great news that the councillor is hoping to reduce the localised council support scheme to zero. I believe it's currently 8.5%. Could the portfolio holder tell us what other authorities currently charge for their residents?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Blackburn and Darwin charge 20%, which is 11.5% more than Wyre. Blackpool charge 27.11%, which is 18.61% more than Wyre. Preston charge 20% and 11.5% more than Wyre. So do Rossendale, and West Lancs charge 22% and 13.5% more than Wyre. You'll see what all of those authorities have in common. They're all Labour controlled, and they all charge people more than we do already. So I would call on all of those areas to follow our lead and to consult on reducing to zero to help the people that need the help the most.
Beavers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We never saw that question coming, by the way. I'd just like to say that. So the Neptune Fish Park, I've just got a little bit of concerns. Obviously, we all know the cost of living crisis, and we've all seen the news about the chippies and the price of fish and everything else. And all the fish merchants are now getting ready to go in. So I'm just wondering whether, you know, we're having those conversations with the fish merchants, because I know myself that it's very, very quiet. You know, obviously, fish and chips, the price has gone through the roof. I mean, we've got a fish fryer over there, he'll tell you, you know. That's it. Oh, I didn't know there was two. So, but I'm just a bit concerned. I know it's ready. It's saying that the leases are there. I'm hoping that the leases are signed. I mean, I saw the state of the places where they were working before, but I just think that they might need some help too. So, just as a heads up, you know, are we looking at helping them out if they are in difficulty moving across?
Councillor Vincent, is there? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, by all means, Madam Mayor. We're desperate for them to sign the leases. We, as an authority, have spent a lot of time and money on the fish park, and we really want that venture to work, and we want them all to sign the leases and move in as soon as possible. I don't know where the fish processors are at with their side of things, but the only delay, as far as we're concerned, is that they were hoping to have an answer on their applications for grants for the fit out, and that they wanted those applications to be decided before they signed their leases. So the leases are there and ready to be signed. That was the last communication we'd had. The chap who's fronting it up for them had been in touch with us and said that he thought a decision was imminent. That was the last I'd heard. That was only about a week ago or so, though. So we are hoping that the leases are signed and everything's sorted by the end of this month, because we want it as much as you do.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to pick up on what you said just a few minutes ago. I just want to just clarify to you, because you just said about people that don't pay their council tax because they can't pay it and it won't be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I completely understand that, that's fine. I just want to put the point across, just so as everybody actually understands, that some of the lowest household incomes are charged, it works out about £68 a week. That's a lot of money to some people. That is as much as people spend on shopping, and some of these families don't have that kind of money to even spend on food right now. So is there nothing that can be done at all to, like, I know you're saying it can't be done on a case-by-case basis, but really there's got to be something that can be done in that case. When if we're taking it in tax and people are not feeding their kids, it's not that they won't feed their kids, it's that they can't. Look at the food banks.
I don't recognise £65 a week in council tax. Okay, but so the people who are very much the poorest in society get the localised council tax support. What my answer was to Councillor Fell's question was that we can't. There is discretionary relief that is available, but it has to come through a proper scheme. And families that can't afford to pay their council tax, there are various debt charities and advice available. We aren't going to take an aggressive approach to enforcement, but equally we can't have a situation where we let one person off and then another person who struggles to pay it and does pay it isn't able to pay. So there are schemes available for help for people, discretionary schemes and otherwise, and I hope that in a similar vein to the support that people have had with their bills, etc., that some sort of scheme is available if that's what people need. But we only have so much money, and our whole budget for this financial year is based upon us receiving the council tax that we predict to foresee. So if we start saying in this meeting we're not going to collect the council tax, we've got a bit of a problem. So, people who need help should speak to us and come to us and communicate with us, because the worst thing they can do is ignore it, because that's when we will enforce. But we aren't out to get anybody who is struggling. They just need to talk to us, and we will do what we can to help people. But we can't. Everything has to be done through a scheme and with certain parameters.
That actually concludes the consideration of the Resources Portfolio Holder Report. We will now move on to the report of the Street Scene, Parks and Open Spaces Portfolio. Councillor Bridge, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that over the summer, I'm sure we all have been all around the borough, at the parks, the open spaces, the streets. They have looked fantastic. Now, I have to admit, I had a bit of a wry smile. I was up at the Edinburgh Festival a couple of weeks ago with the bin men strike on, and I was walking around feeling rather pleased that our fantastic team was keeping our streets so nice and clean. Our parks are looking great throughout the borough. They really are. We are so lucky in the spaces we've got. We're also so lucky in the team that we have that are looking after all this. Not least that we've got yet 5 more green flags for our parks this time. So I'd like to thank Mark and all of his team for all the hard work, and it is hard work. There's lots of footfall, and they work so hard on keeping our quality of life up. So the report is before you if anybody would like to ask any questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the last meeting, Councillor Bidge, your report to the Council stated that with regard to dog fouling fixed penalty notices, none had been given out during the period reported. Given the scale of the problem, I asked how that could be. I was disappointed that the report stated that dog fixed penalty notice numbers would be monitored over the next quarter. In your absence, I was promised a written response, but as yet that hasn't materialised. So just a gentle reminder that I'm still awaiting a response, please.
Yes,
my apologies, I wasn't aware of that. I was on holiday. But of course, I'll get back to you soonest. Okay?
No more questions. Right, that concludes the consideration of the Street Scene, Parks and Open Spaces Portfolio Holders Report. We'll now move on to the report of the Planning Policy and Economic Development Portfolio Holder. So, Councillor Collinson, would you please introduce your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report is before you, and we'll take any questions.
Questions? Nope. Okay then, that concludes the consideration of the Planning Policy and Economics Development Portfolio Holder report. We will now move on to the report of the Neighbourhoods Services and Community Safety Portfolio Holder. So, Councillor Berry, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just an add-on to paragraph 3.3 of my report, ex-offender housing support. I did mention it in the report that we submitted an application to extend financial resources to assist ex-offenders get into settled accommodation. I'm pleased to say that we've been notified that we'll be sharing a fund of just over £42,000 with Fylde Council, so that does help us to continue with this assistance to those coming out. There's nothing else to add other than I expect a sort of a question possibly from Councillor Thale on the work that we're doing to try and assist people in the coming months. But otherwise, my report is before colleagues, and I'll do my best to respond.
Councillor George, please. Question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to thank you for the work that's being done with the neighbourhood policing at the moment. In Faros Ward, there's been a lot more of the PCSOs around, and they've done some really good work around the drug dealing around the mount and everything. I believe you had an input in that according to the inspector, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm very pleased that we're getting more police resources into Wyre, to be quite honest, and that they're aware of our issues and problems. I did attend the police and crime panel yesterday, and I did comment about the instance that we have had concerning drugs and gangs in Fleetwood, and I'm very pleased that hopefully this is more or less resolved now. I'm hoping it's resolved, but I did make the point that it's important that we continue work. We don't let new people come onto the scene. So, and I did get assurance from the Chief Constable that they would be keeping a constant watch on what was happening. So I think that's progress as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Councillor Kay, your question, please.
I'd just like to say, Roger, item 3.2, I welcome this, that we've been awarded the £75,860 to have a full-time support officer for our residents that are unfortunately not to have the housing and have been, on the streets. I supported a gentleman 6 weeks ago that was on the streets, that was sleeping in a park, and I was delivering food in the morning and providing him a tea at night. thank goodness that Wyre did eventually pay the bond and we've got him set up in a home. But it's great that we have this support, because when we came it was hard. Nobody knew what to do with him because of his circumstances, but we persevered, and they were shocked when I walked back in the door and asked for the bond. So I do welcome this project. Thank you very much.
Let's respond then.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think it's important that if we do hear of people who are rough sleeping, that we do report it into our housing team, because they will do what they can to engage with that person, see what they can do to try and get them into housing. It's not an easy job, but they do their best to try and get them into accommodation. And usually they try and follow this up with other support that sometimes these people do need in other social matters. So we do try to assist, but it is important that we do know about the situation as soon as we can, so that we can do what we can.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Berry, it's just a question. We've got you've done a report about community safety and things like that, and about the alcohol partnership. But we've got a massive problem, as you are aware. I think we've had a conversation before with young people vaping. In Fleetwood, school children, they've all got these vape pipes, they're all over the place. Obviously it's great for the tobacco companies because they're getting them all addicted to nicotine, and after vaping we all go on the cigarettes. It's detrimental to the health and well-being of the kids in the future and everything else. I'm just wondering whether I do know we was having a conversation about whether we were going to try and police the sale of vape material to young children. Is that going ahead, or are we not doing that yet?
In all honesty, I don't think that has been followed through, but I will take it on. I do share your health concerns. It is a health matter, I feel, more than anything else, and I do share your concerns. So I don't quite know what the rules and regulations are about selling vape materials at all. So I think I'll probably follow that up and try and find if there are any regulations governing it. But we'll do what we can to make sure that if it is possible to stop young people being sold these products, then we will do so. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Just on the rise of vaping, I noticed at the last beach clean that I went on, I mean, I'm used to picking up hundreds of cigarette ends, but the last beach clean I went on, I actually picked up 2 vape things, which just shows you the direction we were going in. I mean, it's meant to be something to help people get off nicotine from cigarettes, to stop completely, but now it seems to be completely being misused, and it's definitely a danger to young people, and they're getting hooked on it. And I saw a stat, no idea whether it's correct, but 1 in 6 or something like that of young people under the age of 18 are trying this now, and I'm thinking, wow, that something needs to be done to stop that progressing as it is. But moving on to the earlier question to Councillor Henderson, I think Councillor Henderson and Councillor Vincent answered most of it with regard to the costs and the possible funding to CAB and council tax, things we can do for the council tax. But with regard to housing, obviously it says in Councillor Henderson's report that you're developing our own plan. So could you elaborate on what that means for Wyre residents? Have we got any indication of how many homeless people have got this moment in time, and what we're expecting in the winter, and how's that going to be tackled during those months?
Yeah, okay. Just broaden this out, because I think it's important that we try and keep people in their own homes as best we can. And obviously we shall be working with LCC for a start on this Keeping Warm initiative. We'll look to see where LCC is proposing to run the schemes, and first of all, we'll have to sort of plug any gaps, because we've got to think of all areas of Wyre, and also supplement the service if possible. And like places like Fleetwood, we will be looking not only for facilities that would keep people warm, but we would be thinking that we could have food banks there, and possibly some activities for people to keep fit as well as keeping warm. So we are actively looking down that side. We'll also try and support food banks as well, as best we can. I don't know what monies will be available. If there are available monies in our budget, in the housing budget, we will try and do that to keep that side of things going. Particularly on the housing side, first and foremost, it's always been the policy of the housing section to try and keep people in their accommodation, and we try and work with landlords to work out schemes. Say if there's arrears, then we try and work out payment plans with landlords. We've always done that, and if necessary, we can find accommodation for people. There may be available funds for deposits, etc., if there is funding available. But I think one of the big initiatives that I think on the housing side we will try and do is to look at certain property conditions in the private sector, because I think that's important that there are no properties that are not really keeping people warm. I think that is important. They've already begun to start that sort of work, and obviously Care and Repair will do their best to help people in their own homes if they need any sort of extra facilities or applying for extra facilities to keep them warm in the homes. And I think also one of the big initiatives that is we are going to produce like a sheet which sets out people's rights and where they can apply for help, where they can apply for advice, where they can get financial support to try and help them through this difficult period. So answering your question about housing, I think it's trying to keep people in their accommodation, trying to make sure that they are getting all the state benefits that they're entitled to. We try and keep them warm in their homes, and working with landlords is the only way through. Thank you.
That concludes the consideration of the Neighbourhood Services and Community Safety Portfolio Holder Report. We'll now move on to the report of the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio Holder. So, Councillor Bowen, would you please introduce your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My report's before you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Lady Atkins, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just a bit concerned as regards the closure of the Garstang TIC. When we have the large events happening in Garstang, is the library going to be able to cope with people going in there and inquiring? I mean, like the Walking Festival, which is such a success. Is the library going to be able to cope with this type of thing?
Yeah, well, we're going to have a member of staff there manning it while there's big events on. Also, there is a meeting room at the library that we can use, and the area in front of the old TIC will still be available for such as large crowds to meet there, you know, like they get with the Walking Festival.
Councillor Partridge, please, your questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Regarding Wyre's leisure centres, please could you give an update on membership figures and how these compare to the pre-pandemic levels?
The financial projections are on target, in line with the increased subsidy of 350,000, which was agreed a couple of years ago when we started getting into trouble with the YMCA's figures. But there's lots of reduced membership offers, and so actually up to press we're doing really well, and let's hope, I don't know how long that's going to last, but as soon as the electricity prices kick in, I can see that the direct debits etc will drop, so play it by ear at the moment.
No more questions? No? That concludes the consideration of the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio Holders Report. Now it's the opportunity of the members of the Cabinet to make any comments or ask any questions on the reports of their colleagues. Councillor Vincent, would you like to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just with regards to Councillor Berry's report on homelessness. Members should be aware that any of their residents who are faced with eviction, Shelter provide a very good free service of representation. So anybody who is struggling, if you're signposting someone somewhere, while the CAB do a good job, the Citizens Advice Bureau just provide advice, whereas Shelter will provide representation if it's needed.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's on Councillor Bowen's report. It's merely a comment at 3.3 where it's headed frozen. It should be frozen and wet, because I actually attended that event and it was wonderfully run by our officers who really put up with deluge. But not only did they put up with deluge, the parents and the kids that pitched up at Vicarage Park was absolutely superb. It was packed out, and the entertainers were superb. I can't remember if they put on 2 or 3 in one day. But being the good, wonderful, caring community councillor that I am, and it's outside my front door, I decided to go along and show goodwilling for our staff, and I'm sure they appreciated it. But the kids and the parents really loved it, and our staff have got to be. There were quite a few of them there, and they were wet through. Emily Waring, God bless her, who was supposed to be here tonight, but it's her birthday, so Emma's given her the day off, which is very good. She really, really grafted, and by the end of the day, they were all soaking and frozen.
Is that it? That concludes the consideration of the executive's reports. We will now move on to the agenda item number 8, which is the appointments of committees. So, Councillor Henderson, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's very straightforward. The report's before members. It's just swapping a brand new councillor, Rendell, for a long-standing councillor, Alan Vincent, to give him some time off. So it's one swap for the other. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Proposal? Okay, thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions or amendments? No. Councillor Anderson? Yeah, we'll just go straight for the vote. When are we all in favour? Well, yeah, unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Right. Now we're going on to the periodic report, which is obviously Councillor Lamaranel. Would you please introduce the report? You have 3 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
That's what I've got wrote down here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't take too long. I just want to say a massive thank you to Paul Deacon, who's leaving at the end of this month. Paul took over the Armed Forces role within Council. Unfortunately, nobody's come forward to replace him. However, I would like to say a huge thank you to Emma Lyons and Marion Unwin, who have both stepped up and said they'll help and support me going forward for when the council move towards going for the Gold Award. So I'll need some help and support on that. There's things I can't do, but they said they're quite happy to help me in that respect. So a really big thank you to them too. That's great stuff. And the report's in front of council, and quite happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Is there any questions regarding this? No? Okay. Thanks. That the report is noted. Thank you very much. So we have a notice of motion is item 10. We have 2 notices of motion this evening. The first is a notice of motion submitted by Councillor Fale, Beavers, Longton, Rayner, Smith and Sturziker, which is set out in full under agenda item 10. Councillor Fale, would you please propose the motion? And you have a maximum of 5 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Standing up for responsible tax conduct. I'm sure some of you have been Googling councils for fair tax declarations, so will already know what I'm about to tell you. But for others, you might be surprised to hear that between 2014 and 19, a huge 17.5% of UK public procurement contracts with a combined value of 37.5 billion pounds were won by businesses with connections to a tax haven. Recent research has found that the UK loses an estimated £17 billion in corporation tax revenues as a result of profit shifting alone. This motion is about setting an expectation for good tax conduct and encouraging businesses to demonstrate good tax conduct. And this isn't a Labour Party thing. If you go on the web page, you will see that as well as some Labour councils, there are Liberal councils, for example, Chelmsford and Richmond, and there are Conservative councils, for example, Northumberland and Peterborough. So what would passing this motion mean for this council? Well, having corresponded with the Finance Director, there is nothing of concern to be fearful of. In terms of point 2 of the resolution, we already do this. It's been confirmed. We conform to current tax legislation across our activities, including payroll and VAT, and seek advice from specialists where required. In terms of point 3, IR35 checks are part of the Council's standard supplier approval process. An appointment of staff and a recent audit follow-up gave a good opinion. Point 4 is not something this Council currently does, but this has been left there for completeness. Point 5 is not something that can be arranged overnight and is something to be worked towards, and for that reason the standard wording of the motion has been altered to say work with other councils. I suspect by working in association with other councils that have adopted the declaration, we will achieve the ambition of point 5 earlier than we otherwise would. Point 6 may rely on the supplier's honesty, so this possibly may require Wyre to work with other councils that are signed up to the Fair Tax Declaration. Point 7, promoting the Fair Tax Mark certification seems fairly straightforward, and especially so for Wyre, as I'm told there aren't any business in which the council has a significant stake. Point 8, supporting Fair Tax Week also seems straightforward and a reasonable request. And finally, point 9, I hope all members support the need for local authorities to better penalise poor tax conduct and reward good tax conduct through their procurement policies. This is a motion already signed up to by Labour, Liberal and Conservative-run councils across the country. Please support the motion so that Wyre can sign up too. Thank you.
Councillor Beavers, I understand you're going to second the motion.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to reserve the right to speak.
I think it's got Councillor Michael Vincent. Would you like to end? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This council is not the regulator of the tax affairs of companies and businesses. That role and the vast resources required to undertake it is held by HMRC. This council already demonstrates good practice with its tax affairs and completes IR35 checks, as Councillor Vale says, as part of its supplier approval process. However, points 5 and 6 go way beyond what this council can reasonably be expected to do, and while the Conservative group calls for all businesses operating in Wyre and the country to pay their correct taxes, the only tax set by this council is the council tax. A proper test of whether this council is a fair tax council will be whether we tax our residents fairly. We have one of the lowest council tax rates for a Band D property in Lancashire, and have announced tonight that we are to consult to reduce the percentage paid by residents who qualify for localised council tax support to 0. That, Madam Mayor, makes us a fair tax council, not the statements in this motion, and the Conservative group will be voting against it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Vincent has just said, the Conservative group will not be supporting this motion, as this council already conforms to some of the asks and others are out of our remit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully agree with Councillor Vincent, and I move that we go straight to the vote.
Councillor Beavers, would you like to speak, please?
Yes, thank you. So, just in case I can persuade you, but obviously we've been told by the leader that the whip's on, but I'll speak anyway. The whip's on, you've just said it's on, all of you. Right, the people of Wyre and this country want something doing. We've had enough. We've had over 12 years of cuts to public services. We've endured our NHS being starved of vital funding for hospitals and clinics, and the stopping of bursaries that funded the training of our NHS health workers. This has resulted in the massive understaffing of our hospitals. This country is in crisis, with many of the top 2% choosing not to pay taxes in this country, but instead registering their companies in tax havens. 2/3 of the people believe the government and local councils should consider a company's ethics and how they pay their taxes, along with value for money and quality of service when awarding contracts. We all know in this room that taxes enable this and other councils to provide our many services, but without adequate funding, these services will and have started disappearing. We have seen 78% cuts in funding over the last 12 years from central government to all of our services, including councils. We believe that the only way of increasing the chances of our funding being restored is to ensure that all companies that provide a service to councils pay their fair share of tax. It is difficult to measure the impact of tax dodging, but whatever it is too much. And this council can help that fight. This council can help fight the tax dodgers by supporting this motion. I ask you to ignore the whip and vote with this motion. All three of you stated this Conservative group will not be voting. That is the whip.
We just get on and actually agree things. She's right, it's not.
Thank you. Thank you in the chamber. Thank you. Councillor Fail, as a proposer of the motion, would you please respond to the debate? Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Fail.
Can you just ask these to stop heckling at the back, please, Madam Mayor?
Can you just stop, please, in the chamber? Have a bit of respect this evening. Thank you. Councillor Fail, would you propose the motion? Would you please respond to the debate?
Unlike the Conservative group, there is no Labour whip on this motion. We don't need one. We do things because we see we do things because it's the right thing to do.
It's all right.
It's true that the council already does some of these things, and that's great. But there's much in this motion that the council doesn't already do, and that's what needs tackling, like many other councils across the country. I really am not sure what council tax support has to do with promoting fair tax conduct of businesses in Wyre. It's about businesses. When I said earlier that the UK loses an estimated £17 billion of corporation tax revenues as a result of profit shifting alone, I did omit to say, and you might be interested in this one, I don't know. I omitted to say that the web page says that this was a Conservative estimate, which gives me the confidence that the controlling group will actually support this very worthwhile motion. Indeed, I hope all councils will back the motion to enable the council to lead by example on tax conduct. Thank you.
So that concludes the debate. So we'll move on now to the vote. Will those in favour of the motion please show? Have you got it? Right. Those against? Abstentions? Any abstentions?
So the motion is lost, 35.
So the motion is lost.
35 against.
35 against. 7-4. So, yeah, the second notice of motion was... Thank you. Thank you in the chamber. The second notice of motion was submitted by Councillors Bridge, Rayner, Sturziker and Michael Vincent and is also set out in full under agenda item 10. Councillor Bridge, would you please propose the motion? You have a maximum of 5 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before we begin, may I assure everybody that no whip is in place for this? First of all, I'd like to declare a double interest on this. First of all, I'm a dog lover, I have a dog. And secondly, I love bonfire night, and even though the kids have grown up, I still love it. So, we always try and take all of the residents of Wyre into consideration, whatever it is they need and want, and obviously there's accommodations to be made, but we do our very best. Now, for many years we've had in place rules about fireworks, etc., on Wyre Borough-owned land. However, we recognise there may be some holes in this and it might need tightening up a bit, and therefore I'm delighted to actually propose this measure, which hopefully will walk that fine line between the rights of pet owners who are concerned and people who want to celebrate the magnificent 5th of November. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Sturziker, I understand you're going to second the motion.
Yes, that's right. I'd reserve the right to speak.
Would any members who wish to speak or for or against the motion or propose an amendment to please indicate, and you have a maximum of 5 minutes. Sturziker, Councillor Sturziker, would you like to right to speak?
Yes, please. Cheryl and I put this together, did it together, so a bit of it's Cheryl, a bit of it's me. It's a joint speech. So the fireworks, while most of us love going to public fireworks display, there are still a lot of people who use fireworks for personal displays. These are fun events for most, but there are still many people who are negatively affected by them. Most of our veterans suffer from PTSD of some form, and noisy fireworks can be a trigger they can do without. Wildlife too is adversely affected by noisy fireworks, and our own pets suffer. Cheryl has 4 dogs, 2 of which are rescue dogs. They started life living in horrendous conditions in puppy farms and are terrified of loud noises. Throughout October, November and December, they are constantly trying to find new ways to calm them down. Nothing works. They shake in fear, cry, and one of the dogs is so scared she's literally frozen by the fear and won't move for hours. I have 2 dogs. Both of them are rescues. One of them doesn't shut up when it goes on and it drives me mad. It's like the fireworks are going off in my ear. Don't know whether he's scared or he likes it, but either way, it's affecting him. People with anxiety can suffer with the loud noises. Whilst an outright ban on public sale of fireworks isn't possible and not our decision, I believe the next best thing would be to restrict the noise levels, and I'm very happy to second this motion. We both are. Thank you.
Councillor Bridge, as the proposer of the motion, would you please respond to the debate?
What can I add to that except thank you for all the hard work you've put into this motion, both of you.
Yeah, so I think we'll go straight to the vote then. All those in favour? I think that's a unanimous decision. Okay, thank you very much. I think we are. The paper's ended now, so that concludes this night's full council meeting. So thank you very much everybody for attending. So I'll close this meeting at 8:05. Thank you very much.